Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This is What If Goku Was in Fairy Tail. Before we start, remember to like and subscribe to help the channel. Also check the description for the creator of the fanfic. Chapter 21. The Phantom Menace Part 3. Return of the Saiyan. Kagura checked over her shoulder one more time to make sure that Goku was behind his energy shield. She could still feel the hum of power coming from archenemy, even from within its sheath. A minefield of craters and debris surrounding her was testaments to her attempts to harness it. Before, when she had used the weapon to aid Goku, her reserves had been virtually empty and the weapon had empowered her, granting her more strength than she had ever felt before. Now that her reserves were restored and the sword was trying to interact with it, it was incomprehensible to her. All of the power of a high-level S-class right at her fingertips, asking, no, demanding to be used. Power earned in an instant without a single drop of the control that should come with it. I think I'm ready. Alright. This time, instead of trying to mix your power with the swords, just try to guide it. Maybe it will be easier if you don't try to control the entire thing right off the bat. No more cutting mountains either. Trust me when I say that kind of thing upsets people. I'll try, but I still want to get a seal for now. Until I can master this, I could accidentally kill someone. Fine. Now let her rip. Sighing at his enthusiasm, Kagura gingerly pulled the blade from its sheath. Already she could feel the air vibrating around it, as if the atmosphere itself was hurrying out of the way of the legendary weapon. She allowed her magic to leak into the blade ever so slowly until the connection felt somewhat stable. With that said, she gave the weapon a small practice swing, holding back an almost automatic twitch at the carnage she expected. Yet there was nothing. The blade stayed quiet, and the expected shockwave did not burst to life. Kagura stared at the sword suspiciously, as if daring it to do something. Then she swung again and the blade whistled through the air. Still, the devastating power remained under control. Smiling, the girl continued, automatically flowing into an old sword kata she had learned back when she had first started out on her quest. The blade swung through the air gracefully, with greater ease than any weapon she had ever felt before. It practically sung as it flowed through the patterns, a storm contained into a single point of beauty. However, as Kagura continued to move, she allowed herself to become just a tad too relaxed in her movements. The sword, with an almost living sense of glee, took her lapse of focus and ran with it. When the arc of white magic burst forth from the sword, Goku had a split second to reinforce his shield before it crashed against the glowing dome. Kagura's eyes were wide with horror as the two powers clashed in a blinding flash of light. Within his shield, Goku grit his teeth as the force of the slash slowly pushed him backwards towards the mountainside. Hyaaaah. Throwing his arms up into the air, Goku used his ki to force the sword's magic upwards to tear into the cliff side above him. Panting, he had just enough time to shoot off a weak blast that knocked Kagura clear of the rockslide that buried him moments later. He was a young boy, sitting around with a group of friends at a giant table with mounds and mounds of food, a celebration. All the chairs were filled except for one. One of his friends had run off to grab something for him, something he had left behind. But suddenly everything felt wrong. In a blind panic that he didn't even understand, he started running through the streets of a city that he couldn't recognize. He pushed his speed to its limit, even as the other behind him cried out questions, asking him to stop. He couldn't though, he couldn't afford to. So he kept moving, sprinting straight into a quiet little building, an old arena sitting beside it. Inside, a corpse. A boy he knew. A friend. Lying dead on the ground, his neck bent at such an unnatural angle. His best friend. Never coming back. He had been too late. He was older now. 8, 9 years older. He was running harder than he ever had before, had already been running for almost 2 whole days. A large part of him wanted to go even faster, to truly cut loose with everything he had. But he knew he still had a fight to win, he couldn't afford to burn himself out. Finally, in the distance, an old building came into view, thousands upon thousands of little clouds lined up at the entrance. With a burst of speed he was inside and immediately locked eyes with the green-skinned old man waiting for him. They were gone in a flash, reappearing atop a white building in the middle of the sky. Barely pausing, he leapt off the building. A strange old cat tossed him what he recognized as a senzu bean, and then he was moving again, flying across the sky on his trusty companion Nimbus. Faster than sound he flew, arriving in the center of a small plains. Bodies littered the ground and a blast was heading straight for a small child. He barely got the kid out of the way in time, and a short man celebrated his arrival. It was undeserved praise though. He had only managed to save 2. He was too late. The bloated monster was about to explode. It didn't matter how strong he was or how strong his friends were. Nothing mattered but the fact that he had no way to stop it. The monster knew it, he knew it, his friends knew it, and the small child, barely even a teen, knew that he had failed in the only change to save everyone. The boy was too late to act. But he wasn't. So with a final, heart-wrenching goodbye he vanished, taking the creature away from his home to die with it. This time, he wasn't late. He could never be late again. Goku awoke to the sound of Kagura frantically using her gravity manipulation to maneuver the rockslide off of his head. After heaving the mass of stone further down the valley, the girl rushed over and helped him back up to his feet. Waving off her concerns, he surveyed the damage the slash did to the landscape. Yet another mountain lay in ruins. Kagura's control was almost completely non-existent in a controlled setting with no enemies to worry about. If she ever got into a real fight like that, she'd likely vaporize her opponent, along with anything and anyone unfortunate enough to be caught in the crossfire. Goku cringed as his head injury throbbed, sparking flashes of his dream to whisk through his mind. Kagura noticed his expression and stepped in front of him, holding a single finger up in front of his face. "Are you sure that your head is alright? We need to make sure that I haven't accidentally concussed you. Try to track the motion of my finger." "No, I'm alright. I just have a bad feeling all of a sudden. I think something's about to happen." Kagura's eyes snapped from concern to focused in a heartbeat, and her extended hand whipped down to grasp archenemy. "Is it that wind mage again? Do you sense anyone coming?" "No, nothing like that. Something just feels wrong, I guess. I think I might need to head back to my guild pretty soon." "You have to head back? What will happen then? Are you just leaving?" "Well, I already said that it would probably be better to get leads on those slabbers back home anyways. We can just pack up here, call Nimbus to take us back." "Alright, but we are going to go find a sealing expert before we go to Fury. I can't even use my gravity magic properly right now. I can't save my brother if I accidentally kill anyone who can tell us anything. Maybe Makarov can help with that. He's really old, he probably knows someone that can use sealing magic." "No need, I already have someone in mind. It should only be a few hours detour if your cloud is really as fast as you claim." "Right, grab up your stuff as quick as you can and we can get out of here." Kagura made to do just that, dashing the short distance back to the camp and tossing her few belongings into her satchel. Goku made a similar grab for his power call and was about to call for Nimbus when a glowing orb appeared in the middle of the clearing. The two warriors jumped clear of Ball of Light, Goku taking a forward position while she hung a few feet back to his side. Their defensiveness proved unnecessary though when a voice rang out from the sphere. "Goku, help us." Goku's eyes widened as the light shifted to reveal the tear-stained face of Mirajane Strauss. "Mirajane, are you alright?" Kagura allowed herself to relax at Goku's obvious familiarity with the girl and instead took in the white-haired girl's appearance herself. Dark lines were prominent under her eyes, and her hair seemed frizzled from distress. Her eyes were obviously bloodshot and her shoulders were trembling with overwhelming emotion. Shadowgear was attacked by a mage from Phantom Lord because of their inferiority complex. Master Makarov led a group to retaliate, but everything went wrong. It was all a trap to try and take us down. Almost everyone that went with him is injured and they barely got away. They're going to come after us though, we just don't know when. I've been trying to call everyone back, but so far everyone either can't be reached or is too far away to help. Laxus refused to help at all unless, well, the bastard has some demands that I refuse to meet. I'm not going to talk about it again unless I'm shoving his words down his throat. Right now, you're the only one close enough to help in time. They have at least 6 S-class mages that we know about. We don't have enough fighters left to hold out when they get here. You have to help us, Goku, you're our only hope. Don't worry, Mira, I'll get there as fast as I can." "But, what did you mean that I'm the only hope? Even if Laxus said no and you can't get in contact with a lot of people, Erza and Makarov are still there, right? Natsu and Gray can help out in pinch too." Mirajane grinded her teeth and looked down so her eyes were covered in shadows. Goku felt his stomach drop. "Mira, they're okay, right? They lost. Jose caught Master Makarov in a trap and attacked Erza from behind. They're both in critical condition right now, we have no idea when they are going to wake up." "I see. I'll be back soon, Mira. Help patch everyone up the best you can." Goku stepped forward and swiped his hand through the orb before she could respond and turned to face Kagura. Do you have enough control to fight right now? What? Can you fight? No. In a one-on-one I might be able to, but if you're really going into a guild war right now then I might accidentally end up hurting your companions. Right. Goku fished around on his belt and pulled out a small pouch. When we get back to Fury I'll drop you off somewhere quickly before I head to Magnolia. There's about 250,000 jewels in here, get your sword taken care of. You can come find me at Fairy Tail whenever you want after archenemy is ready. I can't just take your money. I don't need it, I live off the woods. I have millions saved up that I only use for food now and then. You need it more than I do. Very well. Thank you Goku. No problem. Now, let's get out of here. Gajeel was perched in the rafters of the control room, gradually allowing the constant rocking of the walking castle to lull him to sleep. He was in a good mood, even with how he'd needed Jose to help him against the Titania. The fact that Phantom Lord was about to finish the job more than made up for it. Below him the entire contingent of Phantom Mages were running around the building preparing for the upcoming conflict. Jose sat in the command chair with a smile that made him look like a cat that had gotten the cream, the canary, and possibly eaten its owner for good measure. Silently surveying his soldiers as they prepared for the final confrontation. Glancing up, the man called up towards his strongest subordinate. Gajeel, when we reach Magnolia it will be your job to track down Lucy Heartfilia and return her to our dungeon. She shall not be allowed to go free again. The Iron Dragon Slayer sighed before he responded, hopping down to talk to his boss face to face. So you're giving me the chump work? Send some other grunt to do that shit, 'cause I ain't. I want to be right up in the meat of the action against the strongest they've got. Jose frowned at the teen and his expression darkened. It would be wise for you to follow orders, if you know what's good for you. Screw that, I want to get in this fight old man, I'm not going to just babysit some blonde bitch the entire time. Suddenly Gajeel's entire world was pain. The members of Phantom Lord froze in shock as their comrade withered on the ground in pain, his entire body covered in purple shadows. Jose watched the teen scream and flail for several minutes before finally ending the attack and kicking the Dragon Slayer across the room. The boy lay groaning on the ground as Jose stalked over to glare down at him. You follow my orders Gajeel, never forget that. I will not tolerate insubordination, no matter who commits the offense. You shall capture the girl or you shall perish with her comrades. Mira Jane had somehow found herself the de facto leader of Fairy Tail. There wasn't a single mage that had the combination of power and wisdom that a normal guild master would normally be necessary for the position in Magnolia, so the one with the best leadership abilities. Not the best fighter or tacticians, just the one who took charge to try and take care of everyone. The mother figure. With one of the weakest fighting strengths in the guild, Mira Jane was somehow expected to lead the remains of Fairy Tail against one of the largest, most powerful guilds in existence. She had no way to help fight, no way to get in contact with anyone else who might help, and no real way to win. All she could do was just keep taking care of the injured to try and get as many people as possible into fighting shape before shit really hit the fan. With a sigh Mira Jane stepped away from her work setting Visca's shoulder and scanned the room for her brother. Elfman had been running back and forth across town, carrying those two injured to fight off to a small warehouse several blocks away. She had sent Lucy and Loke to the building as guards, both to tend to the wounded and to hopefully keep Lucy out of sight to prevent another kidnapping attempt. Eventually she spotted her brother helping Alzak set up barricades around the front of the building. When he saw her approaching he excused himself and came to meet her. Hey sis, you hanging in? I'm doing alright, how are your preparations going? The killer smile that grew on her brother's face matched that of a shark. Levi, Kana and Alzak have all set up some great tricks for holding off attackers. We'll beat them back so hard that they won't even be able to call themselves men. Her brother's undying confidence brought the slightest smile to her face. Anything that can help will be great. But how are you doing Elfnie? You don't have to worry about me, I'm too manly to go down. After all, I have to protect you now remember. You shouldn't have to. I'm not even sure I want you to. What's that supposed to mean? I don't want you to get hurt Elfman. If Jose has his way, none of us are going to be walking away from this. I just wish that I could help, I hate how useless I am. I'm your older sister, you shouldn't have to look out for me. You're not useless Mira, you just take care of everybody in a different way. The guild wouldn't even run without you. And looking after you will never be a burden, I'm a man. It's my job to protect everyone. But you shouldn't have to. If I was even half as strong as I was before things wouldn't be so bad. But they have 6S class mages and right now you're one of the strongest fighters we have. You're going to end up having to fight one of them. We barely have anyone in that strength category, you'll have no choice. But I don't want to lose you too. You won't. I'll make you a man's promise. No. Don't promise me as a man. Promise me as my brother. Promise that'll you'll do whatever you have to in order to win. Alright, I promise as your brother that I'll survive, no matter what. Goku watched as Kagura leapt straight off of Nimbus before he even had a chance to slow down, using her gravity magic to cushion her fall. In a matter of seconds she was out of sight, barely having time to give him a quick wave before he was gone. But there was no way he was going to stop, not when the ominous feeling was growing worse with each passing second. Not when one of his best friends lay helpless and injured. Just the thought of it set his ki raging like a tempest, chaotic and uncontrolled. He barely had the sense of mind to keep it contained when every last part of him just wanted to let it out. Snarling to himself, the teen mentally grabbed hold of his power and forced it back. He couldn't afford to waste it now, he'd never every single drop if he wanted to pull this off. So he wouldn't cut loose, he wouldn't bend on the landscape. Instead he would just push Nimbus to even greater speeds, completely ignoring the mock cone that burst to life around him. He wouldn't be late. Deep in the woods outside Magnolia in the small cabin of the healer Perliusica, Erza Scarlet lay trapped within her own mind. Having fallen unconscious immediately after Jose's attack, not even the legendary healer had realized that Erza had been aware of her surroundings for the last 12 hours. Her mind had awoken shortly after she had been dropped off with the healer, unlike her body. She felt every spell, every salve, tasted every potion forced down her throat, and flinched almost endlessly at the damage to her body. She could feel Perliusica tend to her wounds almost constantly, and the regenerative potions were already working their magic in restoring her body to its prime. In a matter of hours her wounds would be completely gone, as though she was never injured to begin with. But all of that was utterly useless if she couldn't help fight. Erza was a warrior, and if there was one thing any warrior hated, it was helplessness. She had to get back to the guild if she wanted to do anything, but her worthless body wouldn't respond. After minutes of fruitless struggling to move, the teen decided to focus on just one part of her body and build from there. She'd be damned before she allowed her comrades to fall, and there was no way that she was going to give up. After a moment of contemplation, the redhead focused the entirety of her will on what would hopefully be the easiest part of her body to make respond. Wiggle your big toe. Every drop of her mental strength went into that command, but the digit remained stubbornly still. Wiggle your big toe. Wiggle your big toe. Wiggle your big toe. On and on she chanted in her head like a mantra until she lost any sense of time. It went on in an endless loop until it was everything she had, a desperate attempt to bring her body back to life. Then it twitched. The chant cut short and Erza froze in a moment of disbelief. Cautiously, she sent the command once again. The digit responded. Inwardly the girl grinned. The hard part was over. Now, let's get these other piggies wiggling. Every still-standing fairy sprinted outside when the ominous booms filled the air. Each sound was accompanied by tremors that shook the building. Chandeliers were rocking across the ceiling and dishes were sent crashing to the ground. When the mages assembled outside, the sight of a four-legged castle greeted them. The machine walked through the ocean behind the guild high above the water, coming to a stop several hundred meters from shore. Each window was filled with the faces of sneering phantoms, calling out taunts and insults at the vastly outnumbered fairies. More importantly, sticking out of the castle was the single largest cannon that anyone had ever seen. After we are done kicking their asses I want to loot that thing. Visca declared, staring at the cannon with a greedy look in her eye. Alzak sighed in exasperation behind his partner before wincing as a massive voice echoed out from Phantom's fortress. Attention fairies. We have come for the complete and total annihilation of your guild, and we shall accept nothing less. You have 30 seconds to say your goodbyes. Hey dumbass. Kana's voice rang out across the waves. You need Lucy alive, remember? Blast us and you get her too. Come down here and try and take her from us, I dare you. The challenge was taken up by many of the fairies and dozens of insults and threats were tossed through the air. Inside the castle Jose merely smirked. A nice bluff girl, but it's simply that. A bluff. Do you truly take me for a fool? I placed a tracking seal on the girl while she was unconscious in my possession. I know for a fact that she is nowhere near the blast radius. Though maybe, just maybe, right before my mages drag her out of whatever hole she is hiding in, She'll be able to look out the window and watch as every last one of you is reduced to ash. Now, feel the wrath of Jupiter. Fairy Tail went into a flurry of motion when a mass of black energy began to concentrate around the barrel. Gray summoned the thickest shield he could. Natsu tried to burn a trench in the ground for people to take cover in. Kana and Levi joined Biska and Alzak in firing off as many pot shots into the windows of the castle as possible before they would be forced to dive into cover. But they all knew it was futile. Nobody present could hope to counter the power of the gigantic weapon. So when the back legs of the machine were suddenly sliced apart and the beam was redirected far above their heads, Fairy Tail went absolutely wild. Despite the sudden jostling as the back half of the castle suddenly landed in the water, the technicians of the Jupiter cannon were nothing if not professional. They quickly cut power to the beam, cancelling it before more than a third of its power had been used up. "Sir, 5 minutes until we have recharged and redirected the cannon." Jose nodded in response, barely suppressing the rage he was feeling. Snapping at his technicians would be useless, they already knew exactly what he expected of them. "Report. I want to know what the hell just hit us." The techie nodded and brought up footage of the side of the castle just before the blast. At first the screen was clear, but all too quickly a yellow cloud came into view at incomprehensible speeds. An orange-clad rider summoned up a yellow disc in the palm of each hand and lobbed them at both of the back legs, slicing them neatly apart and destabilizing the entire castle. Jose watched the video in silence, his face giving away nothing as the screen turned to black. Silence permeated the air for several moments before the Shadow Mage turned to the techie and spoke. "It appears Fairy Tail's reinforcements have arrived." Goku ignored his friend's cheers as he swung around for another attack. Alerted to his presence now, the dozens of phantom mages filling the windows started firing up at him. With practiced ease, Goku guided Nimbus around the attacks and looked over his opponents with mild interest. There were a lot of them, but the vast majority of them were far beneath his level. No need to waste his energy on the small fry. The energy in the cannon was slowly starting to rise, and one stronger energy signature was coming from somewhere further down the barrel. That was something he should look into, but first things first. He needed to get serious. The weighted boots were the first things to go, kicked off his feet and launched towards a nearby window like a cannonball. The pair of weighted shoes smashed into a pair of mages and knocked them back into the stone wall behind them with enough force to crack the stone. 2 down. His armbands were the next to go, swerving out of the way of a black lightning bolt, and another pair of mages went down. Even as the phantoms continued to fire on him, they suddenly found themselves fired upon in return. Alzak and Biska had scaled to the top of the Fairy Tail's guild hall and were laying down covering fire for him. Goku nodded at them in thanks even as he shed his blue undershirt and dropped it through a window where it crushed a trio of mages to the ground. Before they had a chance to recover, a glowing card flew in beside them and detonated in a ball of electricity. Soon the entirety of Fairy Tail was firing upon Phantom Lord, forcing the arrogant attackers to take cover deeper in the castle. With that problem resolved, Goku drove Nimbus straight down the barrel of Jupiter. At the end of the barrel, the cannon gave way to a wide chamber. Roughly a half-dozen differently colored lacrima were set up around the room, set around a larger lacrima that was lined up directly with the barrel. The smaller lacrima were constantly sending sparks of magic into the larger one, charging it bit by bit. Goku could feel the crystal's growing energy stores, gradually working their way back up to the level they had been when the cannon had fired before. Before the lacrima stood a smirking man. Clad in a crimson robe, the man had hair that was equally split between black and white with a black line painted across his face. His power significantly higher than the other members Goku had come across so far, high enough that the teen hopped off Nimbus and sent the cloud back to wait at the other end of the barrel. "So, I take it that you're the worthless fairy that made our first shot miss. I'll commend you for a neat trick, but you can't really think that you accomplished anything, did you? 3 more minutes until this cannon fires again, and then you and all of your friends will burn. I'll give you one chance. Leave right now so I can destroy this cannon and you won't get hurt." The man's boisterous expression fell away at Goku's bland declaration and a snarl took over his face. "You have no idea who you're talking to, do you, bastard? I am Totomaru of Phantom Lord's Elite Element 4. I'm an S-class mage. You aren't going to destroy this cannon. In fact, all you're going to do is burn." Goku had no room to dodge the massive ball of fire that sprang to life in front of him and only had time to throw his hands up before his eyes before the attack crashed against him. Totomaru was laughing the whole time, practically squirming in delight at the thought of his opponent burning to ash. But as the blast faded away, the laughter petered out into a stunned silence. His skin grew ashen and he visibly trembled as Goku stepped forward, completely unharmed from the attack. What? How? What are you? I fight another fire mage on an almost weekly basis. I guess that I've just gotten so used to it. Weaker fire can't really hurt me. Tough luck for you, I'm probably the worst opponent you could go up against right now. Well, second worst. Natsu's probably hungry right now. Goku closed the distance between them in the blink of an eye, decking the man hard enough across the jaw to knock him straight into unconsciousness. Surveying the room once more, Goku tossed the fire mage over his shoulder and dashed back down the length of the barrel. Even as the magic behind him approached its peak, the teen hopped onto his faithful cloud and floated a short distance away, dead even with the barrel. Then he raised a single hand, palm aimed straight towards the inner lacrima. Hey! Goku bellowed out, loud enough for every mage on both sides to hear him. There was a momentary lull in the battle as they all turned to see what appeared to be a single man flying suicidality at the end of the cannon. Prepare yourselves. Inside the chamber, the magically energies had reached their peak. With a deep chuckle, Jose himself pushed the button that would launch the blast to erase Fairy Tail from existence once and for all. Big Bang Attack. A pulsing pale blue orb burst from Goku's palm and traveled 3/4 of the way down the barrel before Jupiter fired. The moment the two energies collided, the key attack expanded to fill up the entire tunnel. Slowly Jupiter began to push the key blast backwards down the tunnel back towards a smiling Goku. Another orb burst to life in his hands and was sent sailing straight towards the first. And welcome to Fairy Tail. The explosion was titanic. When the key blasts detonated, they forced the magical beam straight back down the barrel at the crystals that had housed them. The detonation was forced straight upwards, all but vaporizing the entire roof of the castle. The cannon was reduced to molten slag, the few pieces of it that hadn't been vaporized altogether. Stunned silence filled the air. Nobody made a move as Goku flew back down and rejoined his friends, casually tossing his unconscious captive off to the side as he did so. For a moment everyone just stared at him. Naturally, it was Natsu that broke the silence. Goku, that was unbelievable. You just took out that cannon all by yourself. When the hell did you get so strong? Hey, I didn't overpower it or anything, I just redirected it. Taking a shot like that head on would have used up way too much of my strength. When you're fighting someone stronger than you, deflection and redirection are always better than trying to outmuscle someone. I just applied that to blasts instead of fists. Well, whatever you did, it worked. Gray remarked. What's next? Well, that Jose guy's probably going to want my head right about now. I think I'm going to give him a shot at doing that himself. Anyone want to come with? Thanks for listening. If you want the next part of this video, be sure to like, subscribe and comment and hit that bell notification. See you next time.